Story 1. I'm 29 years old, and I work as a graphic designer in Portland. This happened last September when my boyfriend Marcus and I took our RV down to Miccosatchee National Forest in Louisiana for what was supposed to be a quiet week away from everything. We'd been planning the trip for months. Marcus had bought the RV, a 2015 Winnebago, off Craigslist back in June, and we'd spent the summer fixing it up on weekends. New curtains, better mattress, LED lights we could dim at night. It felt like an accomplishment, something we'd built together. Our relationship had been rocky that spring, nothing dramatic, just the usual stuff about future plans and whether we were moving in the same direction, and the trip felt like a way to reset. The drive down from Oregon took 4 days. We stopped at truck stops and Walmart parking lots, ate gas station sandwiches, listened to podcasts about true crime and conspiracy theories, normal couple stuff. By the time we crossed into Louisiana, I was ready to be somewhere that wasn't a highway. Miccosatchee wasn't our first choice. We'd originally planned on somewhere in Arkansas, but the campgrounds were all booked. Marcus found Miccosatchee on some RV forum. People said it was quiet, not too crowded, good hiking. The photos looked nice enough. Pine forests, red dirt trails, a few lakes scattered around. We arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. The campground was called Dogwood Flats, tucked into a section of the forest that felt genuinely remote. The ranger station was just a small wooden building with peeling paint, and the ranger himself, an older guy named Dale, maybe 65, seemed surprised to see us. "You folks staying long?" he asked while processing our payment. "A week," Marcus said. "Maybe longer if we like it." Dale nodded slowly like he was considering something. "Well, it's a good time to visit, not many people this time of year." He paused, then added, "Just, if you hear anything strange at night, don't go investigating. Wildlife can sound like all sorts of things." I remember laughing a little. "Like what?" "Oh, coyotes mostly. Sometimes they sound almost human when they get going." He handed Marcus a map of the campground. "You're in spot 17, back near the South Loop. Should be quiet out there." The campground was bigger than I expected, maybe 40 spots total, but Dale was right about it being empty. We only saw 2 other RVs on our way to spot 17, and both looked unoccupied. Our spot was at the end of a narrow gravel road, surrounded by longleaf pines that blocked out most of the sky. There was a picnic table, a fire ring, and not much else. "Perfect," Marcus said as he backed the RV into position. We spent the rest of that first day settling in. Marcus set up our camp chairs while I organized the inside, putting away groceries and making sure everything was secured. By evening, we had a fire going and were drinking beers, watching the sun filter through the trees in these long golden shafts that made everything look peaceful. "This is exactly what we needed," I said. Marcus smiled. "Yeah, no internet, no work emails, just us." That night we heard the coyotes Dale had mentioned. They started up around 11 and he was right. They did sound almost human. Not quite like screaming, but close, like someone trying to mimic crying without really understanding how. It went on for maybe 20 minutes before stopping abruptly. "That's unsettling," I said. "It's just animals," Marcus replied, but I noticed he got up to check that the RV door was locked. The next morning we decided to explore. The campground map showed several hiking trails, and we picked one called the Red Dirt Loop, a 5-mile circle through the forest that was supposed to have decent views. We packed water, snacks, and headed out around 9. The trail was easy at first, flat, well-marked, the kind of path where you could walk side by side and talk. We didn't see anyone else, which felt normal for a weekday morning in September, but about 2 miles in, we came across something that struck me as odd. There was a tree, a large pine, maybe 60 feet tall, with something carved into it. Not initials or hearts or the usual campground graffiti. It was a symbol, maybe 6 inches across, carved deep into the bark. It looked like a circle with 3 lines radiating from the center, almost like a simplified sun. Below it, someone had carved the words, "Don't listen." "That's weird," Marcus said, running his finger over the carving. It looked old. The bark had started growing back over parts of it. "Don't listen to what?" I asked. He shrugged. "Probably some kids messing around." We kept walking, but I found myself thinking about it. The carving had been deliberate, careful, not the kind of thing you'd do on a whim. About a half-mile further, we found another tree with the same symbol. This time the words below it said, "They copy." Marcus took a photo of it with his phone. "Okay, this is definitely someone's weird art project or something. Or a warning," I said. "A warning about what? Echo people?" He was making fun, but I could tell it bothered him too. We found 3 more trees with the same symbols and words over the next mile. The messages were variations on a theme, Don't listen to her, they copy voices. It's not real. The last one just said, run. By the time we got back to the RV, it was early afternoon. Neither of us talked much about the carvings, but they'd planted something uneasy in my mind. Marcus started the generator so we could charge our phones. No cell service out here, but we could still use them for photos and music. And I made sandwiches while he looked up the symbols online using cached pages. Nothing, he said. I mean, there's some stuff about folk magic and protection symbols, but nothing that matches exactly. Maybe it's local, I suggested. Like something specific to this area, maybe. Or maybe it's just someone trying to freak out tourists. That night we met our neighbors, or rather, they came to us. We were sitting by the fire around 8 when I heard footsteps on the gravel. 2 people emerged from the darkness, a man and a woman, both probably in their 50s. The man was tall and thin, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. The woman was shorter, with long gray hair pulled back in a braid. Evening, the man said. His voice was friendly but careful. Saw your fire. Thought we'd come say hello. I'm Bill. This is my wife, Linda. We're in spot 12. Haley, I said. This is Marcus. You folks just get here? Linda asked. She had an accent I couldn't quite place. Southern, but not Louisiana. Maybe Georgia or Alabama. Yesterday, Marcus said. You been here long? 5 days, Bill replied. He glanced at Linda, then back at us. You planning to stay a while? About a week, I said. There was a pause, and I had the distinct impression they were trying to decide whether to say something. Finally, Linda spoke. Did the ranger tell you anything when you checked in? Just that the coyotes sound weird, Marcus said, and not to go investigating strange noises. Bill nodded slowly. That's part of it. Another pause. Look, we don't want to scare you or anything, but there's something you should know about this place. Okay, I said, feeling my stomach tighten. Linda pulled her jacket tighter around herself. There's stories about this forest. Old stories. The locals call them the Echo People. Marcus and I exchanged a glance. Echo people, I asked. Spirits or something like spirits, Bill said. The legend goes that they're the voices of people who died in the forest. Lost hikers, hunters, people who disappeared. They're supposed to mimic voices, copy them, try to lure people away from safety. That's what the carvings are about, Linda added. On the trees. You've probably seen them if you've been hiking. We saw them today, I admitted. On the red dirt loop. Bill nodded. Those have been there for years. Different people have added to them over time. It's a way of warning others. Warning them about what? Marcus asked. His tone was skeptical but not dismissive. About listening, Linda said quietly. If you hear someone calling your name at night or crying or asking for help, don't respond. Don't go to them. It's not real. It's just the Echo People, Bill added. They don't mean harm, necessarily. They're just confused, trying to get someone to acknowledge them. But people who follow those voices, they don't always come back. There was a long silence. Part of me wanted to laugh, to dismiss the whole thing as local folklore that had gotten blown out of proportion. But the way Bill and Linda were looking at us, serious, worried, made it hard to brush off completely. Has anything happened to you? I asked. While you've been here? Linda looked at Bill. He cleared his throat. The first night I heard Linda calling me, from out in the woods. Problem was Linda was right next to me in the RV at the time. I almost went out to check, but she stopped me. It sounded exactly like me, Linda said. He played me the recording. He'd been holding his phone, about to call back to the voice. It was my voice, my cadence, everything. But it wasn't coming from me. Jesus, Marcus muttered. We're telling you this because you seem like nice people, Bill said. And because if it happens to you, you need to know not to trust it. No matter how real it sounds. No matter who it sounds like. They stayed a few more minutes, making small talk about the weather and the hiking trails, before heading back to their spot. After they left, Marcus and I sat in silence for a while. What do you think? He finally asked. I don't know, I said honestly. It's probably just local folklore. But the way they told it, yeah, he agreed. They believed it. That night I didn't sleep well. Every sound outside the RV made me tense. Wind in the trees, something scurrying through leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. Around 2 in the morning I heard voices. At first, I thought it was Bill and Linda talking outside their RV. But as I listened, I realized it was coming from deeper in the forest. 2 voices, male and female, having a conversation I couldn't quite make out. They'd talk for a minute, then stop, then start again. I shook Marcus awake. Do you hear that? He listened, then nodded. Sounds like people. Should we check? No, he said immediately. Remember what Bill said. We lay there listening for another 20 minutes. The voices continued, always just out of range to understand the words. Eventually they stopped, and I drifted back into uneasy sleep. The third day we decided to drive into the nearest town, a place called Boyce, about 30 minutes away, to get more supplies and, honestly, to get away from the campground for a few hours. The town was small, maybe 2,000 people, with a main street that had a grocery store, a diner, and a gas station. We stopped at the diner for lunch. The waitress was a woman in her 60s named Carol who seemed pleased to have customers. While we ate, Marcus asked her about the forest. "You're staying at Dogwood Flats?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "We met some people there who told us about the Echo people." Carol's expression shifted. She glanced around the diner, which was empty except for us, then sat down at our table uninvited. "They told you right," she said quietly. "My grandson worked as a ranger in Kisatchie about 10 years ago. He heard stories from people who'd stayed out there. Voices in the night, calls for help, people hearing family members who weren't there. Some folks went looking and never came back." "Never came back?" Marcus repeated. "Oh, they'd find the bodies eventually, usually off-trail, sometimes miles from where they'd started, like they'd been wandering. The official explanation was always exposure or getting lost, but..." She trailed off. "But what?" I asked. "But my grandson found something once. A woman who'd been reported missing 3 days earlier. She was still alive when he found her, barely. Just sitting under a tree, staring at nothing. When they got her to a hospital, she kept saying the same thing over and over. She sounded just like me. She knew everything I knew." "What happened to her?" Marcus asked. "She recovered physically, but mentally," Carol shook her head. "Last I heard, she was in a facility in Baton Rouge, wouldn't speak to anyone, just sat there." We drove back to the campground in silence. Part of me wanted to leave, to pack up the RV and find somewhere else to spend our vacation, but another part, the stubborn part, refused to be scared off by stories. "It's probably just a combination of things," Marcus said as we pulled back into Spot 17. "Isolation, darkness, wildlife sounds, and local folklore feeding on itself. People hear coyotes or owls, their minds fill in the blanks, and it becomes a legend." "Probably," I agreed, but I didn't sound convincing even to myself. That evening we stayed inside the RV, no campfire, no sitting outside. We made dinner on the propane stove, played cards, and tried to pretend everything was normal. But as darkness fell, the tension grew. Around 10, Marcus's phone rang. We both jumped. There was no cell service. We'd confirmed that repeatedly, but his phone was definitely ringing, showing an incoming call from a number listed as unknown. "Should I answer it?" he asked. "No," I said immediately, but his hand was already moving toward the phone. He picked it up and answered. "Hello?" I watched his face go pale. He held the phone away from his ear, and I could hear it, a voice, female, saying something I couldn't make out. But the tone was wrong, too flat, too measured. He hung up quickly. "It was you," he said. "Your voice, saying my name, asking me to come outside." "I'm right here," I said, my voice shaking. I know you are." He stared at the phone like it might bite him. "How is that possible? There's no service." We spent the rest of the night awake, sitting on the bed, every light in the RV turned on. Around midnight, we heard footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling the RV. Then a knock on the door. "Marcus?" It was my voice, coming from outside. "Marcus, I'm locked out. Can you open the door?" I looked at him, my hand covering my mouth to keep from screaming. He stared back at me, then at the door. The knocking continued. "Marcus, please, it's cold out here. Let me in." We didn't move, didn't respond. After what felt like an hour but was probably only 5 minutes, the footsteps moved away. The voice called out one more time, distant now. "Why won't you help me?" Then silence. The fourth morning, we found Bill and Linda's RV empty. The door was hanging open, and when we looked inside, their belongings were still there. Coffee cups on the table, shoes by the door, but no sign of them. We drove to the ranger station immediately. Dale wasn't there, but another ranger, a younger guy named Chris, was manning the desk. "The couple in Spot 12 is missing," Marcus said. "Bill and Linda, their RV's open, but they're gone." Chris frowned. "When did you last see them?" 2 nights ago," I said. "They came to our campsite to talk." He picked up a radio. "I'll check with the other rangers. Sometimes people go for early morning hikes and forget to close their RV, but we'll look into it." "There's something else," Marcus said. He told Chris about the voices, the phone call, everything. Chris listened without interrupting, his expression carefully neutral. "Did Dale tell you about the Echo people?" Chris finally asked. "Bill and Linda did," I said. Chris nodded. "It's a known phenomenon in this forest. We don't like to advertise it because it sounds crazy and most people wouldn't believe it anyway. But there have been enough incidents over the years that we take it seriously. So it's real? Marcus asked. I don't know if real is the right word, Chris said carefully. But something happens out here. People hear things, see things. Sometimes they go missing. We've had search and rescue teams find people miles off trail, completely disoriented, claiming someone they knew led them out there. What causes it? I asked. No one knows. Some people think it's infrasound from geological activity. Others think it's mass hysteria or carbon monoxide from decaying vegetation. The locals believe it's spirits. Take your pick. He stood up. Look, I'm going to organize a search for your neighbors. I'd recommend you folks consider leaving. Not because of superstition, but because statistically, this part of the forest has a higher rate of disappearances than others. We went back to the RV and started packing. We didn't discuss it, we just both knew we needed to leave. But as I was inside gathering our belongings, I heard Marcus's voice calling me from outside. Haley, come look at this. I started toward the door, then stopped. Marcus was supposed to be unhooking the water and electricity. That would take him around to the other side of the RV, not toward the woods where the voice was coming from. Haley. The voice was more insistent now. I need you to see this. I backed away from the door. My phone was on the counter, no service, but I could use the camera. I turned on the video function and pointed it toward the door, recording. Haley, please. The voice was starting to sound frustrated. There's something wrong with the water hookup. I need your help. I knew it wasn't Marcus. I knew, but the voice was perfect. Every inflection, every pause, exactly how he'd sound if he genuinely needed help. Then I heard the real Marcus from the other side of the RV. Haley, you okay in there? Why'd you lock the door? I hadn't locked the door, or had I? My hand was shaking so badly I couldn't remember. I'm coming around, Marcus called. I heard his footsteps on the gravel, heard him climb the steps and try the door handle. Haley, the door's stuck. Outside, the other voice, the one that sounded like Marcus, was still calling to me from the woods. Haley, please, I need you. I unlocked the door and Marcus came in, breathing hard. What's wrong? You look terrified. Listen, I whispered, pointing toward the forest. We stood there silently. The voice called out again. Haley, where are you? Marcus's face went white. That's my voice. I know. We watched through the window as a figure emerged from the tree line. It was Marcus. Same height, same build, same clothes he was wearing right now. The figure stood at the edge of our campsite, looking toward the RV. Haley, it called. Are you in there? The real Marcus grabbed my hand. His palm was sweating. We need to go, right now. But when we looked out the windshield, there was another figure standing in front of the RV. This one looked like me. Same dark hair, same jacket I was wearing. It was just standing there, not moving, not speaking. Just staring at the RV with an expression I couldn't read. Back door, Marcus whispered. We moved to the back of the RV as quietly as we could. Through the rear window, we could see more figures emerging from the forest. Some looked like us. Others looked like Bill and Linda. And some looked like people I'd never seen before, but they all had the same quality, the same wrongness in the way they moved and stood. They're surrounding us, I said. Marcus pulled out his phone. Still no service. We'll have to make a run for it, to the truck. Our truck was hitched to the RV parked just outside. Getting to it meant going out the main door and past whatever was standing there wearing my face. On 3, Marcus said. We run. We don't stop. We don't look back. I nodded. 1, the figure that looked like me moved closer to the door. 2, the Marcus thing circled around from the side, joining the me thing. 3, Marcus threw open the door and we ran. The figures didn't try to stop us. They just watched as we sprinted to the truck. Marcus fumbled with the keys, and for a horrible moment I thought we'd have to unhitch the RV. But he got the truck started, and we pulled forward, the RV jackknifing behind us as the connection snapped. I looked back as we sped down the gravel road. The figures were standing in a circle around our abandoned RV. As we turned the corner and they disappeared from view, I swear I heard them start talking to each other, using our voices. We didn't stop at the ranger station. Didn't stop until we hit the main highway. Even then, Marcus kept driving, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, until we reached Boyce. We pulled into the first motel we saw and checked in for the night. The police were sympathetic but ultimately unhelpful. They took our statement about Bill and Linda, but when Marcus mentioned the Echo people, the officer's expression went carefully blank. We'll send a team out to check on them, he said. These things usually have a simple explanation. We stayed in Boyce for 2 days waiting for news. The police found Bill and Linda's RV abandoned like ours, but no sign of Bill and Linda themselves. A search team went out, covered the entire south loop of the campground. Nothing. On the third day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Hello? Is this Haley Scott? A woman's voice, official sounding. Yes. This is Ranger Chris McConnell from Kisatchie National Forest. I wanted to follow up with you about your report. Did you find Bill and Linda? I asked. No, but we did find something else. Could you come back to the station? There's something I need to show you. Every instinct told me not to go back there, but we went anyway. Dale was at the station when we arrived, along with Chris and 2 other rangers I didn't recognize. What did you find? Marcus asked. Chris gestured for us to follow him to a back room. On a table was a collection of items, a camera, a journal, and several printed photographs. We found these in the woods near your campsite, Chris said. We think they belong to Bill and Linda, based on some of the photos, but there's something you need to see. He spread out the photographs. They showed the campground, various hiking trails, normal vacation pictures, but in several of them, in the background, barely visible among the trees, were figures, human-shaped but wrong somehow, standing still, watching. They were documenting them, Dale said quietly. Bill and Linda, they came here specifically to investigate the Echo people. This wasn't just a camping trip. I picked up the journal and flipped through it. Bill's handwriting, detailing their observations over several days. The last entry was dated the morning before they disappeared. They're getting closer. Last night, we saw 7 of them standing just beyond the firelight. Linda thinks they're getting better at mimicking us. This morning I found footprints around the RV that match Linda's boots exactly, but she was inside with me all night. We need to document as much as we can before we leave tomorrow. This is important. People need to know. There's one more thing, Chris said. He pulled up a photo on his phone and showed it to us. It was a screenshot of a missing persons report from 2008. The photo showed a couple in their 40s, smiling at the camera. It was Bill and Linda, but 17 years younger. These people have been missing since 2008, Chris said. They were last seen at Dogwood Flats campground. We never found their bodies. Until now, they were considered unsolved disappearances. I felt the room tilt, but we talked to them. They were real. They were in their 50s. You talked to something, Dale corrected gently. But it wasn't Bill and Linda, not anymore. We left Kisatchie that day and drove straight through to Texas before stopping. We ended up selling the RV. Neither of us could stand to look at it. We never got a refund for the remaining days of our reservation. Sometimes late at night my phone rings with no caller ID. I never answer. Marcus's does too. We've both heard each other's voices coming from empty rooms, calling out from behind closed doors. We don't respond. We don't talk about what happened anymore. What's there to say? That we stumbled into something we don't understand? That there are places where the normal rules don't apply? That the echoes of missing people somehow persist? Learning, mimicking, trying to bring others into wherever they are. The journal entry bothers me the most. This is important. People need to know. Bill wrote that, or the thing that used to be Bill wrote it. Maybe they meant it as a warning. Or maybe they were trying to lure more people in, to join them in whatever half-existence they'd become part of. I looked up the Echo people after we got home. There's not much online, a few scattered forum posts, a mention in a book about Louisiana folklore from the 1970s. The book described them as the restless dead, seeking the warmth of the living, attempting to remember what it was to be human. The book said they're harmless as long as you don't acknowledge them. Don't respond to their calls, don't follow their voices, don't open the door when they knock. But what happens if you do? What happens to the people who follow those voices into the forest and don't come back? Do they become Echo people themselves? Are Bill and Linda still out there somewhere, standing in the trees, watching new campers arrive, trying to warn them in their own way? I know they never found the bodies. The search was called off after 2 weeks. Bill and Linda, the real ones, were officially listed as deceased after 7 years. But I wonder if that matters. If some part of them is still there, copied and preserved like a recording that plays on loop forever. Last month, Marcus and I were in Portland walking through the park near our apartment. We stopped to get coffee, and while we were waiting in line, I heard a voice behind me. Haley? I turned around. There was no one there except a few strangers. But I swear for just a second I saw Linda standing under a tree, watching me with that same worried expression she'd had when she came to warn us about the Echo people. Then I blinked, and she was gone. Marcus didn't see her. He never does. But I know what I saw, and I know what it means. The Echo people aren't limited to Kisatchie. They can follow you home. They can find you anywhere if they've already learned your voice, your face, your patterns. Sometimes at night I hear myself calling from the hallway. I hear Marcus even though he's lying right next to me. We don't respond. We pretend we don't hear it, but it's getting harder, because yesterday I found something. My journal, the one I kept during the trip, was sitting on my desk. I know I threw it away. I remember putting it in the trash, watching it disappear into the garbage truck. But there it was, open to a blank page at the end. Someone had written in it, in my handwriting. "Come back, we're waiting, we need you to understand." I showed Marcus. He went pale but didn't say anything. We both know what it means. They're not done with us. The Echo people found what they needed from us. Our voices, our faces, our patterns, and now they want the rest. I don't know how much longer we can resist, because here's the thing nobody tells you about the Echo people. They're not just mimicking you, they're becoming you. And the more you hear them, the more you acknowledge their existence, the more real they become. Until one day, you're not sure which version is the real you and which is the echo. Sometimes I catch myself saying things I don't remember deciding to say, moving in ways that feel automatic, scripted. Marcus has mentioned it too, like we're both slowly becoming copies of ourselves. Maybe that's what the Echo people really are. Not the dead, but the living who got too close, who listened too long, who became indistinguishable from their own echoes until there was nothing left of the original. Dale was right about one thing. The Echo people don't mean harm. They're just confused, trying to get someone to acknowledge them, to remember that they were once real, once alive, once more than just voices in the dark. Now I understand why Bill and Linda came to warn us. They were trying to break the cycle to save someone before it was too late, but it didn't work. We heard them, we listened, and now we're becoming Echo people too. I'm writing this down because I need someone to know. If you're reading this, and if you ever find yourself in a place where voices call out to you in the dark, where figures stand in the trees wearing familiar faces, where your own voice echoes back to you from empty spaces, don't listen, don't respond, don't try to understand. Because once you do, once you acknowledge them, they have a piece of you. And they'll keep taking pieces until there's nothing left but an echo. Marcus is calling me from the other room right now. I can hear him asking me to come help him with something. But Marcus is at work. I know he is. I saw him leave this morning. The voice calls again, more insistent. "Haley, please, I need you." I'm not going to respond. I'm going to sit here and finish this and pretend I don't hear it. But it's getting harder, because now I can hear my own voice answering from somewhere else in the apartment and I'm not the one speaking. Story. My name is Ryan Parker, and I need to write this down while I can still remember what happened, or at least what I think happened. It's been 3 weeks since we got back from the Sawtooth Mountains in Idaho, and I'm starting to wonder if we actually made it back at all. My girlfriend Emma and I had been planning this trip for months. We'd bought a used RV back in March, a 1997 Winnebago that Emma found on Craigslist for $8,000. It needed work, but that was half the appeal for her. She was always fixing things, always convinced she could make anything better with enough effort and YouTube tutorials. The RV became her project through the spring and into summer, and by July she declared it roadworthy. I was less convinced. The thing still smelled like mildew and old carpet, and the refrigerator made a grinding noise that Emma swore was normal, but sounded like something dying. Still, I didn't say much. Emma had been through a rough year. Her mom passed in February, and she'd thrown herself into this trip like it was some kind of lifeline. Who was I to take that away from her? We left Portland on a Thursday morning, August 11th. The drive to Idaho took most of the day, with stops for gas and food. Emma was in good spirits, singing along to the radio, pointing out landmarks. I drove and nodded and tried not to think about the grinding noise that seemed to be getting worse. We arrived at the Sawtooth National Forest around 7 that evening. The campground we'd reserved was near Redfish Lake, a popular spot. But Emma had found a different location on some forum, a more remote RV site that supposedly offered better views and fewer tourists. She'd saved the coordinates on her phone and insisted we check it out before settling in at the main campground. The coordinates led us down a Forest Service road that wasn't on our GPS. Emma pulled up the map on her phone, but the signal was weak and the screen kept freezing. I suggested we turn back, but she was determined. She'd read reviews, she said. People loved this spot. The road got rougher as we went deeper into the forest. The RV bounced over ruts and rocks, and I kept expecting to hear something snap underneath us. The trees closed in on both sides, dense and dark, even though it wasn't quite dusk yet. I didn't see any other vehicles, no tire tracks, nothing to suggest anyone had been down this road recently. "Are you sure about this?" I asked. "It's just a little further," Emma said, eyes on her phone. "The reviews said it's tricky to find, but worth it." "What reviews? Where did you even see this place?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Some hiking forum. I bookmarked it, but I think the site's down now. Doesn't matter. I've got the coordinates." We drove for another 15 minutes before the road opened into a small clearing. It wasn't much, just a flat area surrounded by pines, with a fire ring made of stacked stones and a wooden picnic table that looked like it had been there for decades. No other RVs, no cars, no people. The clearing was small enough that the trees seemed to lean in from all sides, their branches creating a canopy that blocked most of the sky. "See?" Emma said, grinning. "Perfect." I looked around. Something about the place felt wrong, though I couldn't articulate why. It was too quiet, maybe. No birds, no insects, just the sound of wind moving through the branches. And the light was strange, filtered and gray, even though the sun should have still been up. "I don't know," I said. "It's pretty isolated." "That's the point." Emma was already climbing out of the driver's seat. "We came here to get away from people, didn't we?" She had a point. I followed her out of the RV, stretching my legs and taking in the clearing. That's when I noticed the flags. They were tied to trees at irregular intervals around the perimeter of the clearing, strips of cloth, maybe a foot long each, hanging from branches at about eye level. They were red or had been once. Now they looked faded and stained, like they'd been there for years. Some were torn, others relatively intact, but all of them hung limp in the still air. "What are those?" I asked, pointing. Emma looked where I was gesturing. "Trail markers, probably. People use them for hiking. They look old." "So? This place isn't exactly on the main tourist circuit." I walked over to the nearest flag. It was tied to a pine branch with what looked like twine, the knot crude but effective. The fabric itself was some kind of cotton or canvas, rough to the touch. When I lifted it, I noticed dark stains near the edge. Brown, almost rust-colored. Could have been dirt, could have been something else. "Ryan, come on," Emma called. "Help me level the RV." I let the flag drop and went back to help her. We spent the next hour getting the RV set up, leveling it with blocks, hooking up the generator, unloading our supplies. By the time we finished, the light was fading and the temperature had dropped noticeably. Emma started a fire while I made sandwiches in the RV's tiny kitchenette. We ate outside, sitting on the picnic table bench and watching the fire. Emma seemed relaxed for the first time in months, leaning back with her eyes closed, breathing in the pine-scented air. I tried to match her mood, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. "Did you see any trail cameras when we drove in?" I asked. "No." "Why?" "Just wondering. This feels like the kind of place that would have them. It's national forest land. They don't really monitor these remote spots." She opened her eyes and looked at me. "You're being paranoid." Maybe I was. I forced a smile and took another bite of my sandwich. That night I woke to the sound of footsteps outside the RV. I sat up in bed, listening. Emma was asleep next to me, her breathing steady and slow. The footsteps were deliberate, crunching on pine needles and dirt, circling the RV at a measured pace. I thought about waking Emma, but something stopped me, some instinct that said making noise would be worse than staying quiet. The footsteps stopped near the door. I held my breath, waiting. Then I heard it. A low, rhythmic tapping, like someone drumming their fingers against the metal exterior. It went on for maybe 30 seconds before stopping abruptly. The footsteps resumed, moving away from the RV and toward the tree line. I waited another 5 minutes before getting up. I moved to the window and looked out, but the clearing was empty. The fire had burned down to coals and the red flags hung motionless in the dark. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, Emma suggested we explore the area on foot. I was hesitant, but she was already lacing up her hiking boots and packing a day pack with water and snacks. I figured it was better than sitting around the RV thinking about the footsteps. We followed what looked like a trail leading out of the clearing, though it was barely visible, just a faint depression in the undergrowth, marked by more of those red flags tied to trees. Emma walked ahead, her phone out, trying to get a signal. "I want to see if I can find that forum again," she said. "Maybe there's more info about the area." "Your phone even working out here?" "Barely. Keeps dropping to 1 bar. We walked for maybe half an hour, the trail winding deeper into the forest. The flags appeared every 100 feet or so, always on the right side of the trail, always tied at eye level. I started counting them, though I'm not sure why. By the time Emma stopped to rest, I'd counted 18. "This trail's longer than I thought," she said, taking a drink from her water bottle. "Maybe we should head back." "We just got started." "I know, but..." I stopped, looking past her. There was another flag ahead, but this one was different. It was tied lower at waist height and the fabric looked newer, brighter red, less faded, and there was something written on it in what looked like black marker. Emma followed my gaze. "What's that say?" We approached together. The writing was crude, the letters uneven. "Turn back." "Well, that's not ominous at all," Emma said, but her tone was lighter than her expression. "Maybe we should listen to it. It's probably just some hiker's idea of a joke." She started walking again, past the flag. I hesitated, looking at the message. The marker was fresh enough that it hadn't fully faded from weather exposure. Someone had been here recently. Emma, wait, she turned back. What? I think we should go back to the RV. Because of some graffiti on a trail marker? Because this doesn't feel right. She sighed, but to her credit, she didn't argue. We turned around and started walking back the way we'd come. That's when I realized something was wrong. The trail looked different. Not drastically, just subtly off in ways that made my brain itch. The trees were in slightly different positions, or maybe they weren't. Maybe I just hadn't been paying attention before. And the flags, I swore they were on the left side of the trail now, not the right. Do you remember this part? I asked Emma. She was looking at her phone, frowning. GPS isn't loading. Must be a dead zone. Emma. What? The flags. They're on the wrong side. She looked up, glancing at the nearest flag. So? We're going the opposite direction now. Of course they look different. That's not... I stopped, trying to organize my thoughts. When we were walking out, they were on our right. Now they should be on our left, but they're on our right again. You're overthinking it. But she didn't sound convinced. We kept walking. 20 minutes passed, then 30. We should have been back at the clearing by now, but the trail just kept going, winding through identical-looking sections of forest. The flags appeared at regular intervals, always on the right, always at eye level, except now there were more of them. I started counting again. By the time we'd been walking for an hour, I'd counted 36 flags. That was twice as many as I'd counted on the way out. We're going in circles, I said. Emma stopped. Her face was pale, and there was a tightness around her eyes that I recognized as fear, though she was trying to hide it. That doesn't make sense. We've been walking in a straight line. Then where's the clearing? She didn't answer. She pulled out her phone again, staring at the screen. Still no signal. The GPS is just spinning. I looked around. The forest was exactly the same in every direction. Dense, dark, silent. No birds, no insects. No sound except our own breathing and the whisper of wind through the branches. Let's try going off trail, I said. Head straight in one direction. We'll hit a road or a landmark eventually. Emma nodded. We picked a direction, what I thought was west based on where the sun was, and started walking. The undergrowth was thicker here, and we had to push through branches and step over fallen logs. After about 10 minutes, I saw a flash of red ahead. Another flag tied to a tree at eye level. No, Emma said. No, that's not possible. We went straight. But there it was, and beyond it, another flag, and another. We were back on the trail. Emma's breathing was getting faster, more shallow. I recognized the signs of a panic attack starting. I grabbed her shoulders, made her look at me. Hey, it's okay. We'll figure this out. This isn't happening, she said. This can't be happening. We'll go back to the clearing, I said, trying to sound calm. We'll get in the RV and drive out, okay? She nodded, wiping her eyes. We followed the trail again. This time I paid attention to everything. Every tree, every rock, every turn. The trail curved left, then right, then left again. The flags appeared at regular intervals, always on the right. I counted them obsessively. 1, 2, 3, 4. At flag number 12, we found the clearing. But it wasn't our clearing. It looked similar. Same size, same ring of trees, same fire pit. But the picnic table was different, older and more weathered, and our RV wasn't there. Instead, there was a tent set up near the fire pit. A small dome tent in faded green. What the hell? Emma whispered. We approached slowly. The tent was zipped shut and there was no movement inside. A backpack sat next to the fire pit, along with a small camp stove and some cooking supplies. Everything looked ordinary enough, except for one thing. The fire pit was full of ashes, and sitting on top of the ashes was a red flag, neatly folded. Hello? I called out. Anyone here? No response. Emma walked over to the tent. Should we look inside? I don't know. This is someone's campsite, but where are they and where's our RV? She had a point. I nodded and she unzipped the tent. Inside was a sleeping bag, a pillow, and a notebook. Emma picked up the notebook and opened it. Her face went white. Ryan, I looked over her shoulder. The notebook was filled with writing, neat, careful handwriting in blue ink. The entries were dated, starting from 3 weeks ago. The last entry was dated yesterday. It read, "The flags lead in circles. I've tried leaving the trail, but I always end up back here. The clearing looks wrong today. Different table, different fire pit, like someone replaced it overnight. I think I'm losing time. The sun doesn't move the way it should. And there's something walking around at night. I hear it outside the tent, but I'm too afraid to look. If anyone finds this, don't follow the red flags. They don't lead anywhere. They just keep you here." Emma dropped the notebook. "We need to go. Right now." "Go where? We don't even know where we are." "I don't care. Anywhere but here. We backed away from the tent. As we did, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There were flags around this clearing too, tied to trees at irregular intervals, and they were identical to the ones around our clearing. Same faded red fabric, same crude knots. "Emma," I said slowly, "how many clearings do you think are out here?" She looked at me, and I saw my own fear reflected in her eyes. We ran. I don't know which direction we went. We just crashed through the forest, not bothering with trails or flags or anything else. Branches whipped at our faces, roots tried to trip us, but we kept going. Emma was ahead of me, faster and more agile, and I struggled to keep up. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, we burst into another clearing. This one had our RV in it. We stopped, both of us breathing hard. The RV looked exactly as we'd left it. Same parking spot, same scuff marks on the side, same Oregon license plate. The fire pit was cold, our picnic table was there, and the forest pressed in from all sides. And the flags were back, hanging from trees around the perimeter. "Is this it?" Emma asked. "Is this ours?" "I think so." We walked over to the RV. I tried the door, and it opened. Inside, everything was where we'd left it. My jacket on the back of the driver's seat, Emma's book on the tiny kitchen counter, our cooler under the table. It looked right. It felt right, but I couldn't shake the image of that tent, that notebook, those words. "The clearing looks wrong today. Different table, different fire pit." "We're leaving," Emma said. She was already in the driver's seat, turning the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered, but didn't catch. She tried again. Same result. "No," she said. No. "Pop the hood, I'll check it." But when I went outside and opened the hood, everything looked fine. The battery connections were tight. The fluids were at the right levels. There was no obvious damage. I went back inside. "Try it again." Emma turned the key. This time the engine caught, rumbling to life. She let out a shaky laugh, half relief and half hysteria. "Okay," she said. "Okay, let's go." We started driving. The Forest Service road was exactly where it should have been, and we followed it back the way we'd come in. Emma drove faster than was probably safe, the RV bouncing over ruts, but neither of us cared. We just wanted out. The road seemed longer than I remembered. We drove for what felt like an hour, the trees an endless blur on either side. Emma kept checking the odometer, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "We should have hit the main road by now," she said. "Maybe we're just going slower than we think. The odometer says we've gone 12 miles. We only drove about 8 miles in yesterday." I didn't have an answer for that. We kept driving. Eventually, finally, we saw it. The end of the Forest Service road, the junction with the paved highway. Emma let out a sob of relief and turned onto the highway, heading south toward civilization. We drove for 2 hours straight, not stopping until we reached a gas station in Stanley, a small town on the edge of the national forest. Emma pulled in and killed the engine, and we just sat there for a moment, neither of us speaking. "Are we going to talk about what happened?" I finally asked. "I don't know what happened. That notebook was probably fake. A prank. People do that stuff all the time, trying to scare tourists. What about the trail, the flags, the way we kept ending up back at clearings? We got turned around, it happens, the forest all looks the same." She was using her rational voice, the one she used when she was trying to convince herself of something. I wanted to argue, but part of me wanted to believe her. The alternative was too much to process. We got gas, used the bathroom, bought some snacks. Emma called her brother to let him know we were okay. Even though we hadn't told anyone we were going to that remote clearing, she wanted to hear a familiar voice, I think, proof that the normal world still existed. We spent that night at a motel in Stanley. Neither of us suggested going back to the RV, even though it was parked right outside. We lay in bed with the lights on, not sleeping, not talking. Around 3 in the morning, I heard it, footsteps outside our door, measured and deliberate, pacing back and forth in the motel parking lot. I got up and looked through the window blinds, but I couldn't see anyone. Emma grabbed my arm. Don't what? Don't look, just don't." So I didn't. I got back in bed and we lay there listening to the footsteps until they finally stopped around dawn. We drove home the next day. The trip took longer than it should have. Emma refused to go faster than 55 miles per hour, and we stopped every hour or so, like she needed to keep confirming we were making progress. When we finally pulled into our driveway in Portland, she put her head on the steering wheel and cried. That was 3 weeks ago. We haven't talked about what happened. Not really. Emma sold the RV 2 days after we got back, took a loss on it, didn't care. She's thrown herself into work, taking extra shifts, staying late, anything to avoid being home, I think, anything to avoid talking about it. But I can't stop thinking about that notebook, about those words. The clearing looks wrong today. Different table, different fire pit. Because here's the thing I haven't told Emma, the thing I've been too afraid to say out loud. Our apartment looks wrong, not dramatically, just slightly off. The living room furniture is arranged the way I remember, but the couch is a few inches to the left of where it used to be. The pictures on the wall are the same, but they're in different frames. The coffee mugs in our cabinet are the same brands we've always used, but the colors are wrong. The red one I remember is now blue, the blue one is now green. Emma hasn't noticed, or if she has, she's not saying anything. And every night around 3 in the morning I hear footsteps outside our apartment door. Measured, deliberate, pacing back and forth. I haven't looked. I don't think I want to know what I'd see. Yesterday, I was taking out the trash when I noticed something tied to the railing of our apartment building's exterior staircase. A strip of red fabric, faded and stained, about a foot long, tied with crude twine. A flag. I stood there looking at it for a long time. Then I went back inside and locked the door. Emma asked me what was wrong. I told her nothing. But I've started noticing more of them. There's one tied to the stop sign at the end of our street. Another one on a tree in the park where we walk. One on the fence outside the grocery store. They're appearing closer to our apartment every day. I count them when I see them. So far, I've counted 18. I know what comes next. I remember from the trail, that 19th flag, the one with the message written on it, turn back. But I don't think that's an option anymore. Last night, Emma was sleeping, and I couldn't. I got up and went to the window. The street outside was empty, the streetlights casting yellow pools on the pavement. And then I saw it. A figure standing under one of the streetlights. Too far away to make out details, but I could see it was holding something. A strip of red fabric. It was tying it to the lamppost. As I watched, it finished the knot and looked up. Directly at our window, directly at me. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. When I looked again, the figure was gone. But the flag was there, hanging from the lamppost, swaying slightly in the wind. That was flag number 19. I haven't told Emma. I don't think I will. She's been sleeping better the last few days, and I don't want to take that away from her. Maybe she won't notice the flags. Maybe they're only visible to me, or maybe, and this is the thought that keeps me up at night, maybe Emma's in a different version of Portland, one without flags, and I'm still back in that forest, walking in circles, counting red strips of fabric tied to trees. Maybe we never left at all. I started writing this because I thought it might help, thought getting it down on paper might make it feel more real, more manageable. But now that I'm finishing, I realize I don't know what I'm trying to accomplish. Warn someone? Explain something? Leave a record? This morning, there was a flag tied to our apartment door handle. Emma didn't see it. I untied it before she woke up and threw it in the dumpster. But when I came back from work tonight, it was back. Same flag, same knot. Same placement. I'm sitting here now writing this at our kitchen table. It's 2:45 in the morning. Emma's asleep in the bedroom. In 15 minutes, I know I'll hear the footsteps outside our door. I'm going to look this time. I have to know what's out there, what's been following us since that clearing in Idaho. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's some elaborate stalker, some creep who followed us home. That would be better in a way. At least that would make sense. Or maybe I'll open the door and see another clearing. Different table, different fire pit. But the same flags hanging from the same trees, marking the same trail that leads nowhere, except back to itself. Maybe I'll see myself standing there holding the 20th flag, ready to tie it to something, ready to mark the next stop on this trail that never ends. I don't know. I'm scared to find out, but the footsteps are starting. Measured, deliberate, pacing back and forth outside our door. I'm putting down this pen, I'm walking to the door. I'm going to look through the peephole first, and then, if I'm brave enough, I'm going to open it. If you're reading this, if somehow this notebook ends up somewhere public, all I can tell you is this. If you ever find a trail marked with red flags, if you ever see strips of faded cloth tied to trees at eye level, if you ever hear someone walking around your campsite at 3 in the morning, turn back. Don't follow them. Don't trust them. And whatever you do, don't try to figure out where they lead, because they don't lead anywhere, they just keep you here. The footsteps have stopped. They're right outside the door now. I can see a shadow under the gap at the bottom, feet standing still, waiting. I'm going to look now. I'm going to open the door. Story 3. My name is Megan Lee. I heard my brother's voice echoing from the cave. But he died 2 years ago. We'd driven to Dead Horse Point in Utah because my therapist thought it might help. Closure, she called it. David and I had planned this trip before the accident, back when he was alive, and our biggest concern was whether the RV rental would have decent air conditioning. After the funeral, after the settlement, after I'd spent 6 months unable to look at his empty bedroom, I decided to go anyway. Maybe Dr. Morrison was right. Maybe being in the place we were supposed to visit together would help me accept that he was gone. The RV I rented was a 32-foot Class A motorhome, bigger than what David and I had originally planned. I'd upgraded after realizing I couldn't handle the idea of being cramped into a smaller space. The extra room felt necessary, though I couldn't articulate why. I picked it up in Moab on a Wednesday afternoon in late September, after the summer crowds had thinned, but before the real cold set in. The rental guy, a leathery man in his 60s named Carl, walked me through the systems. Water hookup, electrical panel, propane, waste disposal. Standard stuff I'd researched online, but his deliberate explanations felt comforting. "You heading to Dead Horse Point?" he asked, glancing at my reservation printout. "Yeah, my brother and I were supposed to come here." "We're supposed to?" "He died. Car accident." Carl nodded slowly, the way people do when they're trying to figure out if you want sympathy or silence. He chose silence, which I appreciated. He finished the walkthrough, handed me the keys, and said, "Weather's supposed to be clear. Should be a good few days." The drive from Moab to Dead Horse Point took about 45 minutes. The landscape was exactly what David had described when he first suggested the trip: red rock formations stretching endlessly, canyon walls that looked carved by something ancient and deliberate. He'd shown me pictures on his laptop, excited in that specific way he got about places with geological significance. David had been studying environmental science at Colorado State. He wanted to work for the Park Service eventually, maybe become a ranger. He had a whole plan mapped out. I pulled into the campground around 5. The RV sites at Dead Horse Point are pretty basic: gravel pads with electrical hookups, picnic tables, fire rings. No sewer connections, but there's a dump station near the entrance. The campground host, a woman in her 70s wearing a floppy sun hat, directed me to Site 14, which had a decent view of the canyon rim about 100 yards away. Only 3 other RVs were visible in the campground, scattered among the 30 or so sites. September was off-season. I spent the first hour getting set up. Leveling the RV took longer than Carl's tutorial suggested, and I had to adjust the stabilizer jacks 3 times before everything felt solid. The electrical hookup was straightforward, at least. By the time I had everything connected and the interior lights working, the sun was starting its descent toward the canyon edge. The light turned everything orange-red, exactly the kind of scene David would have photographed with his decent, but not professional camera. I made dinner, instant ramen elevated with a fried egg and some frozen vegetables I'd picked up in Moab. The RV's propane stove worked fine, though the igniter was temperamental and I had to use a lighter. I ate at the small dinette table, looking out the window at the canyon. The silence was profound. Not peaceful exactly, just empty. After dinner, I tried to read a book I'd brought, some thriller Dr. Morrison recommended. I made it through maybe 10 pages before realizing I hadn't absorbed a single word. My mind kept drifting to the fact that David should have been sitting across from me, probably reading something about desert ecosystems or climate patterns. He always traveled with reference books, convinced that reading about a place while you were in it enhanced the experience. I went to bed around 9, exhausted from the drive and the setup. The RV's bedroom was in the back, separated from the main cabin by a sliding door. The mattress was decent, better than I'd expected from a rental. I lay there listening to the absolute silence. No traffic sounds, no neighbors, no ambient noise from appliances, just wind occasionally hitting the RV's exterior with a hollow sound like someone tapping on the walls. Sleep came eventually, though I don't remember the transition. What I do remember is waking up at 2:47 a.m. I checked my phone. To complete silence, not even wind. The darkness in the RV was total. I'd forgotten to leave any lights on, and the blackout shades I'd pulled down blocked even the faint starlight. I lay there feeling disoriented, trying to figure out what had woken me. Then I heard it, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Megan, my brother's voice. I sat up so fast I nearly hit my head on the low ceiling. My heart was hammering. I stayed perfectly still, barely breathing, listening. Nothing. Just silence again. I told myself I'd been dreaming. That had to be it. I'd fallen asleep thinking about David, probably dreamed about him, and the dream had bled into waking consciousness. Dr. Morrison had mentioned that grief can cause all sorts of sensory experiences: hearing voices, seeing movement in peripheral vision, feeling a presence. Normal stuff, apparently. The brain processing loss. I lay back down and forced myself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The meditation technique Dr. Morrison taught me. After maybe 15 minutes, I drifted off again. The next morning was clear and cool, probably around 55 degrees. I made coffee using the RV's machine, which produced something weak and slightly metallic tasting, but caffeinated enough. I sat outside at the picnic table, watching the sunrise light up the canyon walls. A ranger truck drove past around 7:30, the driver waving. I waved back. I spent the morning hiking the East Rim Trail, which runs along the canyon edge for about 2 miles. The views were spectacular. You could see the Colorado River winding through the canyon below, and the La Salle Mountains in the distance. David would have stopped every 50 feet to take pictures or point out rock formations. I took a few photos with my phone, but mostly I just walked. Around noon, I returned to the RV and made a sandwich. The campground had filled up a little. 2 more RVs had arrived, both at sites on the opposite end from mine. I could see people moving around near their vehicles but couldn't make out any details at that distance. That afternoon, I decided to explore some of the less traveled areas. The ranger station had a map showing unofficial trails and points of interest. One notation caught my attention. Cathedral Cave, 0.8 mi from Site 14 vicinity. Unstable rockfall not maintained. The name felt significant. David had been fascinated by cave systems. He'd gone spelunking a few times with friends from his university caving club. I found the trail around 3 p.m. Trail was generous. It was more like a game path barely visible through the scrub brush and red rock. I followed it northwest from my campsite, moving slowly to avoid twisted ankles on the uneven terrain. The cave entrance appeared after about 25 minutes of walking. A dark opening in the canyon wall, maybe 15 feet high and equally wide. It looked like erosion had carved it out over thousands of years. I stopped about 30 feet from the entrance. Something felt wrong, though I couldn't identify what. The opening was just a hole in the rock, nothing obviously threatening about it, but I felt a strong reluctance to get closer. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes arguing with myself. This was ridiculous. It was just a cave. David would have gone straight in, excited to see what geological formations were inside. I was being irrational. Then I heard it again. Megan, my brother's voice coming from inside the cave. I actually staggered backward, nearly tripping over a rock. The voice was clear this time, not distant, not dreamlike. It sounded exactly like David, the specific timbre, the slight uptick at the end like he was asking a question. I stood frozen, staring at the cave entrance. Logic said I'd imagined it, grief hallucination, exactly what Dr. Morrison had described, but it had sounded so real. "David," I called out, my voice cracking. Nothing. I waited. Wind moved across the canyon, making a low whistle through the rock formations. No other sound. I turned around and walked back to the RV, moving faster than necessary. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the campground. I went inside, locked the door, which felt absurd, locking an RV door in the middle of a campground, and sat on the couch trying to calm down. It wasn't real. I knew it wasn't real. David was dead. I'd been at his funeral, seen the closed casket, watched them lower it into the ground. The voice was my brain processing grief in a particularly cruel way. I made dinner mechanically, pasta with jarred sauce, and ate without tasting it. The sun set. I tried to read again, failed again. Around 8, I heard voices outside, the other campers presumably, though I couldn't make out words. Normal sounds of people enjoying a camping trip. I went to bed early, around 9:30. This time I left a small LED light on in the main cabin, telling myself it was just practical in case I needed to get up at night. Not because I was afraid of the dark. Not because of what I'd heard at the cave. I woke to my phone buzzing, a text from Dr. Morrison, just checking in. "How's the trip going?" I looked at the time, 2:47 a.m., exactly the same time I'd woken up the night before. I stared at my phone screen, feeling my chest tighten. Then I heard it. "Megan, please, closer this time. Not inside the RV but nearby, outside." I grabbed my phone and turned on its flashlight, pointing it at the windows. The blackout shades were still down. I sat perfectly still, listening. "Megan, I need help." David's voice, definitely outside the RV, somewhere near the door. My hands were shaking hard enough that the flashlight beam wavered. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But I heard it so clearly. "Please, Megan, I'm hurt." I stood up, moved toward the door, stopped. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me not to open it, but it sounded so much like David. What if somehow... No. That wasn't possible. David was dead. I'd seen the accident report, the police photos they wouldn't let us avoid during the wrongful death case. There hadn't been enough left of his car to recognize the make and model. "Megan, it's cold out here." I backed away from the door, returned to the bedroom, closed the sliding door and locked it even though it was just a flimsy interior lock. I got back in bed and pulled the blanket over my head like a child. I stayed like that for over an hour, listening. The voice called my name 14 more times. I counted. Each time it sounded more plaintive, more hurt, More like David on the rare occasions he'd been sick or injured. Around 4 a.m. it stopped. The silence that followed felt worse somehow. I didn't sleep again that night. At first light I packed up, I was leaving. This had been a terrible idea. Dr. Morrison meant well, but coming here was making everything worse, not better. I had everything disconnected and stowed by 7:30. I was pulling out of the campsite when I saw the ranger truck approaching. The same ranger from the day before, a man in his 40s with a weathered face. He waved me down. I stopped, rolled down the window. "Heading out early?" he asked. "Yeah, something came up." He nodded, but his expression was odd, concerned maybe. "You doing okay?" "Someone reported hearing yelling last night, thought there might be an emergency." "Yelling?" "Coming from around your site, around 3 a.m. I felt cold. I didn't hear anything. "You sure?" Sounded like someone calling for help according to the report. I shook my head. I was asleep. He studied me for a moment. "Listen, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did you go to Cathedral Cave yesterday?" My stomach dropped. I found it. Didn't go inside. "Did you hear anything there?" I hesitated too long. "Miss Lee," he said, and I realized he knew my name from the campground registration. People sometimes report hearing things at that cave. Voices. Usually family members who've passed. There's probably a scientific explanation. Echo effects, wind patterns, something. But my advice is stay away from it. Has anyone— I couldn't finish the question. "Gone inside when they hear the voices?" He shook his head. "Not in the 3 years I've been stationed here. The folks who hear things usually leave pretty quick. Like you're doing." "Has anyone stayed?" He looked uncomfortable. "Yeah, one woman about 5 years ago according to the logs. Stayed a full week. Came back from the cave area every day looking worse. On the 7th day, she went out there and didn't come back. Search and rescue found her 3 days later about a quarter-mile past the cave entrance. Heart attack, medical examiner said, but she was only 36 and no history of heart problems." Jesus. "I can't tell you not to go there. It's BLM land, not park property. But I strongly recommend you don't." I nodded. "I'm leaving, right now." "Good call." He stepped back from the window. "Safe travels, Miss Lee." I drove away from Dead Horse Point, following the winding road back toward Moab. I should have felt relieved. I was leaving, getting away from whatever was happening at that cave. But I didn't feel relieved. I felt pulled, like a fishhook lodged somewhere in my chest connected to a line stretching back toward Cathedral Cave. I made it about 15 miles before I pulled over. I sat in the RV on the shoulder of the empty highway, engine idling, staring at nothing. David's voice had sounded so real, so hurt. I thought about the ranger's story. The woman who stayed a week, kept going back. Had she heard someone she loved? Had the voice gotten more desperate each time, more convincing? Dr. Morrison would tell me to keep driving. This was clearly a psychological episode brought on by grief and isolation. The logical thing was to return to Moab, check into a hotel, call her office, maybe even go to an urgent care clinic if the auditory hallucinations continued. Instead, I turned the RV around. I drove back to Dead Horse Point. The ranger was gone when I reached the campground. I pulled into Site 14 again and parked. Didn't bother setting up the hookups. Just turned off the engine and sat there. I waited until afternoon until I was sure I hadn't been followed or noticed. Then I grabbed a flashlight from the RV's emergency kit and walked toward Cathedral Cave. The trail seemed easier to follow this time, like it had been worn deeper overnight. I reached the cave entrance around 3 p.m., same time as yesterday. The opening looked larger somehow, though that was probably just my perception. I stood at the threshold, flashlight in hand. "David?" I called. Nothing. I stepped closer. The interior of the cave descended at a slight angle, the walls smooth from centuries of water erosion. My flashlight beam reached maybe 30 feet in before the passage curved. "David, if you're here." "Megan." Right behind me. I spun around. Nothing there, just the canyon, the afternoon light, the scrub brush. "I'm inside." David's voice from the cave. I turned back, pointed my flashlight into the darkness. "Where?" "Follow my voice." I stepped into the cave. The temperature dropped immediately, the air damp and still. My footsteps echoed on the stone floor. The passage curved left after about 40 feet, then opened into a larger chamber maybe 30 feet across. My flashlight picked out formations that might have been stalagmites, though they looked wrong somehow, too regular. "Keep going." David's voice from another passage at the far end of the chamber. I crossed the chamber. The second passage was narrower, barely wide enough for my shoulders. I had to turn sideways in places. The walls were slick with moisture. "Almost there," David said. The passage opened into another chamber, smaller than the first. This one had a strange smell, like copper and earth. My flashlight beam swept across the space and stopped. There was something in the center of the chamber, not a rock formation, something else. I moved closer, even though everything in me was screaming to run. It was a cairn, stacked rocks forming a dome about 4 feet high, deliberate, human-made. "Megan," David's voice came from inside the cairn. I knelt down, found a gap between the rocks large enough to see through, pointed my flashlight inside. There were bones inside, not David's. They couldn't be David's. He'd been cremated, but they were human bones, arranged in a seated position, skull facing the opening where I knelt. "Help me," David's voice said, coming from everywhere now. The walls, the ceiling, the bones themselves. I stood up, backing away. My flashlight flickered once, twice. "Please don't leave me here again." The flashlight went out completely. Total darkness, the kind of absolute black that only exists deep underground, where not even the faintest light penetrates. I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. Got it out, turned on the light. The cairn was gone. The chamber was empty, except for me. I ran. Hit the narrow passage at full speed, scraping my shoulders on the walls. Didn't care. Kept moving. Reached the first chamber, crossed it, found the entrance passage, saw daylight ahead, burst out of the cave into afternoon sun so bright it blinded me temporarily. I ran back to the campground, not following the trail, just crashing through brush and over rocks. Reached the RV, got inside, locked the door. My phone rang immediately. "Dr. Morrison." I answered, breathless. "Megan, are you okay? You sound—" "I need to leave. I'm leaving right now." "What happened?" "I can't explain. I just need to go." Okay, that's fine. Can you drive safely?" "Yes." "Then drive to Moab, check into a hotel. Call me when you get there." I hung up, started the RV, pulled out of the campsite without checking mirrors or looking back. I drove straight through to Moab, returned the RV to Carl's place. He took one look at my face and didn't ask questions, just processed the return. I checked into the first hotel I found, called Dr. Morrison, told her I'd had some kind of panic attack at the campground, that I needed to come home. She scheduled an emergency session for 2 days later, once I'd be back in Colorado. I didn't tell her about the cave, about David's voice, about the cairn that disappeared. That night, in the hotel room, I looked up Cathedral Cave online. Found almost nothing, just a few references on geology forums, mentions in old newspaper archives. One article from 1987 about a missing hiker whose backpack had been found near an unnamed cave in the Dead Horse Point area. One from 2003 about rumors of Navajo ceremonial sites in the region, most closed to outsiders. Nothing about voices, nothing about cairns. I flew home the next day, went to my emergency session with Dr. Morrison, told her a version of events that sounded like a grief-triggered panic attack. She adjusted my medication dosage and suggested we meet twice weekly for a while. I agreed to everything, but here's what I didn't tell her. Every night since I left Dead Horse Point at exactly 2:47 a.m. I wake up, and I hear David calling my name. Not from outside anymore, closer than that. Last night I heard him from inside my closet. Tonight I woke up and heard him from under my bed. His voice sounds more desperate each time. More hurt, more real. I looked up the woman the ranger mentioned, the one who died near the cave. Found her obituary. Her name was Jennifer Caldwell. She'd lost her daughter 2 years before her death. Drowning accident. I found 3 other similar cases going back 30 years. All at Dead Horse Point. All people who'd lost someone close. All of them died within days or weeks of visiting. The last woman's death certificate listed cause of death as heart failure, but the autopsy notes, which I had to really dig to find in digitized county records, mentioned something strange. Her heart had stopped, yes, but there were no signs of disease or blockage. The pathologist's note said, cardiac arrest appears spontaneous, no apparent physiological cause. Of note, patient's mouth was open at time of discovery, and throat showed signs of severe trauma consistent with screaming. I'm writing this at 2:43 a.m. I'm still in bed. I can hear something breathing in my closet. The door is opening. Dr. Morrison was wrong. Coming to Dead Horse Point didn't give me closure. It gave something else the opening it needed. And I think I'm about to find out what happens when you finally follow the voice all the way to its source. The closet door is fully open now. I can see David standing there in the darkness. He looks exactly like he did the day before the accident. He's smiling. He's holding out his hand. "Come on, Megan," he says. "I've been waiting for you. And God help me, I want to take it. I want to believe this is real, that somehow, impossibly, he came back. But I keep thinking about that cairn, about the bones inside it, arranged like they'd been sitting there waiting. How many people are sitting in cairns in the dark places of Cathedral Cave? How many of them walked in following a voice they loved? David's hand is still extended. "Don't you trust me?" he asks. And the terrible thing is, I do. I've always trusted David. Even now, looking at his smile in my closet at 2:47 a.m., knowing this can't possibly be him, I want to trust him. My feet are on the floor. I'm standing up, walking toward him. His smile is getting wider. I can see all his teeth now, more teeth than David ever had. His hand is so close to mine. If you're reading this, it means I scheduled this post before. His fingers are cold, so cold, and they don't feel like skin at all. They feel like... Story 4. My name is Jason Miller, and I need to tell someone what happened at Boundary Waters last September. I've tried talking to the police, to my therapist, to anyone who'll listen, but no one believes me. They think the isolation got to me, that I had some kind of breakdown. Maybe I did. I don't know anymore. I'd driven up to northern Minnesota with the idea that 3 weeks alone would fix something inside me. My marriage had ended 6 months earlier. Amanda left after I'd missed our 10th anniversary because of a work emergency that wasn't really an emergency at all. Just another excuse to avoid going home. After the divorce finalized, I quit my job as an insurance adjuster, sold the house, and bought a used Winnebago with the leftover equity. The plan was simple. Drive until I found somewhere quiet, stay until I figured out what came next. The Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness seemed perfect, remote, peaceful, the kind of place where you could disappear for a while and no one would bother you. I'd found a dispersed camping site, about 8 miles from the nearest road, accessible only by a dirt track that my RV barely managed. The spot sat in a clearing surrounded by white pine and birch, maybe 50 yards from the edge of a small unnamed lake. According to my GPS, the nearest town was Ely, population 3,400, about 23 miles southwest. I arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-September. The drive from Minneapolis had taken 6 hours and I was exhausted. After unhooking everything and leveling the RV, I walked the perimeter of my campsite. The clearing was roughly circular, about 40 feet across, dense forest on all sides except for a narrow path leading down to the lake. I could see one other RV through the trees, maybe a quarter mile away, but it looked empty, no lights, no movement. That first night, I grilled a steak on my portable propane grill and sat in my folding chair watching the sun set over the water. The silence was absolute, no traffic noise. No voices, no planes overhead, just the occasional call of a loon and the whisper of wind through the pines. I'd brought 2 bottles of bourbon and fully intended to work my way through both of them over the next few weeks. I slept better that night than I had in months. The second day, I spent most of the morning fishing from the shore. Didn't catch anything, but I didn't particularly care. Around noon, I walked the trail that circled the lake, about a 2-mile loop through the forest. I saw no one. The other RV I'd spotted from my campsite was indeed abandoned. Its tires flat, windows covered with grime. It had been there a long time. When I got back to my site around 3 in the afternoon, I noticed something I'd somehow missed before. There were bones arranged in a circle around my RV. I stood at the edge of the clearing and stared. They formed a perfect ring, maybe 10 feet from the RV on all sides. Small bones mostly. I'm no expert, but they looked like they came from rodents, birds, maybe a few squirrels. Some were old and yellowed. Others newer. They weren't scattered randomly. Someone had placed them there deliberately, each bone positioned with care. My first thought was that some local kids had done it as a prank, but that didn't make sense. This site was too remote for kids to stumble across, and the bones themselves looked like they'd been there a while. Some were partially buried in the dirt, as if they'd been there through multiple seasons. I walked the perimeter of the circle slowly. There were hundreds of bones, maybe thousands. The more I looked, the more I saw. Tiny vertebrae, delicate ribs, small skulls the size of walnuts, all of them arranged in an unbroken ring. I considered packing up and leaving right then, but that felt like an overreaction. They were just bones. Animals died in the forest all the time. Maybe there was some natural explanation, a predator's feeding ground, or some quirk of the ecosystem that caused carcasses to accumulate in this spot. I got a rake from the RV's storage compartment and spent the next hour clearing them away, scraping the bones into a pile at the edge of the forest. It took longer than I expected. Every time I thought I'd gotten them all, I'd spot more half buried in the soil. When I finally finished, I had a mound of bones about 3 feet high. That night, I drank more bourbon than I should have. I kept thinking about those bones, about how deliberately they'd been arranged. Around midnight, I stepped outside to relieve myself, and I could have sworn I saw movement in the trees, just a shadow, there and gone. I told myself it was a deer. I woke the next morning with a headache and a dry mouth. After making coffee, I stepped outside to assess the day. The sky was overcast, threatening rain. The bones were back. Same circle. Same perfect arrangement, as if I'd never touched them. I stood there holding my coffee mug, trying to make sense of it. I'd raked them up. I'd piled them at the edge of the clearing. I'd seen the bare ground where they'd been, but now they were back, exactly as before. I walked over to where I'd left the pile. It was gone. Not scattered. Gone. The ground showed no sign that hundreds of bones had been stacked there less than 12 hours ago. I went back inside the RV and sat at the small dinette table. I tried to think rationally. Someone must have come during the night and put them back. But why? And how had they done it so quietly? The RV's windows were open. I would have heard something. I decided to stay inside for the rest of the day. I had plenty of food, water, and propane. I could wait this out, see if whoever was messing with me got bored and left. But around 2 in the afternoon, I heard footsteps outside. I froze. The footsteps circled the RV slowly, deliberately. I moved to the window and peered through the blinds. I couldn't see anyone, but the footsteps continued, crunching through the dry grass and leaves. Then they stopped. I waited. 5 minutes, 10, nothing. Finally, I opened the door and looked out. No one. But something had changed. The bones were rearranged. Instead of a simple circle, they now formed a pattern. Concentric rings, with symbols I didn't recognize in the spaces between them. It looked like some kind of ritual diagram, precise and deliberate. I slammed the door and locked it. My hands were shaking. I tried my cell phone, but there was no signal this far out. I'd known that before I came. Had chosen this spot specifically because it was cut off from everything. Now that isolation felt like a mistake. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to convince myself to leave. But every time I looked out the window, I saw those bones, and something kept me from starting the engine. It wasn't fear exactly. It was more like I was waiting for something. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the driver's seat with the RV's headlights on, illuminating the clearing. The bones were clearly visible in the harsh light, their arrangement casting strange shadows. Around 3 in the morning, I saw her. A woman stood at the edge of the clearing, just beyond the bone circle. She was naked, her skin pale in the headlights. She didn't move or speak, just stood there, watching. I should have driven away. Should have started the engine and smashed through whatever was in my way. But I couldn't move. I sat there staring at her, my heart pounding. She began to walk forward, stepping carefully over the bones without disturbing them. As she got closer, I could see that something was wrong with her. Her movements were too smooth, too fluid. Her face showed no expression at all. When she reached the RV, she placed both hands on the hood. Her eyes met mine through the windshield. I hit the horn. The sound shattered the silence, blaring into the night. The woman didn't flinch, didn't blink. She just stood there with her hands on the hood, staring at me. I laid on the horn again, holding it down. The noise was unbearable in the enclosed space, but I didn't let up. 5 seconds, 10, 15. She smiled. Then she turned and walked back into the forest, moving with that same unnaturally smooth gait. I watched until she disappeared into the darkness. I kept the headlights on until dawn. When the sun came up, I got out to examine the RV's hood. There were no handprints, no marks at all. But the bones had been rearranged again, forming a spiral that led from the circle's edge to the RV's door. I decided to leave. I'd had enough. But when I turned the key, nothing happened. The engine was completely dead. No clicking, no grinding, just silence. I checked the battery connections, the fuses, everything I could think of. The RV should have started. There was no reason for it not to. I was trapped. I rationed my food carefully. I had maybe 5 days' worth if I was careful. My water would last a bit longer. I tried to stay calm, to think through my options. I could walk out, 23 miles to Ely. I could make that in a day if I pushed hard. But I didn't leave. Something kept me in that RV, watching through the windows as the bones rearranged themselves throughout the day. New patterns, new symbols, always changing. On the 4th night, I heard scratching under the RV. It started around midnight, a steady scraping sound like nails on metal. It moved from the rear to the front, then back again. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door, shining the beam underneath. Nothing, but the scratching continued. I went back inside and tried to ignore it. By 3 in the morning, it had gotten louder, more insistent. I could feel the RV shifting slightly as if something was moving beneath it. Then the scratching stopped, and I heard digging. I pressed my ear to the floor. The sound was unmistakable. Something was digging directly beneath the RV, moving dirt with fast, frantic movements. I didn't sleep that night either. At dawn, I got out to look. There were fresh holes all around the RV's perimeter, each about 6 inches deep. And in each hole, there were more bones. New ones. They looked fresh. That's when I noticed the smell. It had been there for a while, I realized, gradually getting stronger, sweet and rotten, the smell of decay. I walked the perimeter of the clearing trying to find the source. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, but the holes definitely smelled worse. I knelt next to one and looked inside. There was something at the bottom, something pale and fleshy. I reached in and touched it. It was a finger. I jerked back, my stomach lurching. I ran to another hole and looked inside. Another finger. The next hole contained a toe. The one after that, an ear. They were human remains. Fresh human remains, being placed in holes dug around my RV. I vomited in the grass. When I could think again, I forced myself to examine the bones in the circle more carefully. I'd assumed they were animal bones. Small rodents and birds. But looking closer now, I saw things I'd missed before. Tiny finger bones. Small vertebrae that could have come from human infants. Miniature skulls with distinctly human features. These weren't animal bones. I tried the RV's engine again. Still dead. I tried my phone. Still no signal. I was stuck here with whatever was happening. That afternoon, I saw the first of the others. A man stood at the edge of the forest, watching. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, but something about him seemed off. He stood too still, too straight. I yelled at him, "Hey, I need help." He didn't respond. Didn't move. "My RV's broken down. Can you help me?" Nothing. He just stared. Then a woman joined him. Then another man. Then a child. They emerged from the trees one by one, forming a line at the edge of the clearing. All of them watching. All of them perfectly motionless. I counted 15 people by sunset. They stood in complete silence, never moving, never speaking. Just watching. When darkness fell, they started walking. They moved in unison, stepping carefully over the bone circle and advancing toward the RV. Their movements were synchronized, identical. I locked the doors and watched them come closer. They surrounded the RV, standing shoulder to shoulder, forming a living wall. Their faces were blank, empty. Then they began to hum. It was a low sound, barely audible at first, a droning tone that seemed to come from deep in their chests. It vibrated through the RV's walls, making the windows rattle. The humming grew louder. The RV began to shake. I covered my ears, but the sound penetrated everything. It felt like it was coming from inside my own skull. Then it stopped. The people were gone. I was alone in the clearing again, but the bones had changed. They no longer formed a circle. Instead, they spelled out words: stay, sleep, join. I didn't stay in the RV that night. I couldn't. I grabbed my backpack, threw in some water and food, and ran. I didn't care about the direction. I just ran into the forest, crashing through brush, not looking back. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. Then I collapsed against a tree and tried to catch my breath. When I looked up, I was back in the clearing. The RV sat exactly where I'd left it. The bone words remained on the ground. I tried again, picked a different direction, ran until I was exhausted. Same result. The clearing. The RV, the bones. I tried 6 times, 6 different directions, always ended up back where I started. The sun was rising by the time I accepted it. I couldn't leave. The forest wouldn't let me. I climbed back into the RV and locked the doors. I was so tired, so incredibly tired. I told myself I'd just rest for a moment, just close my eyes for a minute. When I woke up, it was dark again. I'd slept the entire day, and I wasn't alone. The woman from before, the naked woman, sat in the passenger seat. She was watching me with that same blank expression. I should have panicked, should have screamed, but I was too tired, too worn down. "What do you want?" I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed at the window. I looked out. The 15 people were back, standing in their circle around the RV. But now I could see them clearly. I could see what they really were. Their bodies were wrong. Proportions slightly off. Limbs too long or too short. Faces not quite symmetrical, like someone had built them from memory without getting the details right. "What are you?" I whispered. The woman in the passenger seat leaned closer. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind through hollow trees. "We were like you once," she said. "We came here, we tried to leave, now we stay." "Why?" "The forest is hungry. It needs offerings, bones, pieces, eventually, everything." I looked at her hands. She was holding something, a knife. The blade was made of bone. "Your turn," she said softly. "You can give freely or we can take, but everyone who comes here gives something." I understood then. The bones in the circle, the fingers and toes in the holes, the people standing outside. They'd all been campers once, travelers. people who'd chosen the wrong place to stop. And now they were something else, something that fed the forest. I won't, I said. She smiled. You will. They all say that at first. The next week is hard to remember clearly. Time moved strangely. I'd be awake, then suddenly hours would pass. I'd find myself standing outside the RV with no memory of leaving it. The people came and went, always watching, always humming. The bones kept rearranging themselves, new patterns every day, new messages. Feed, give, become. I tried to resist, but I was so hungry, so tired. My food ran out. My water ran out. I thought about eating the bones. They were all around me after all. One night, or maybe it was morning, I couldn't tell anymore. I found myself holding the bone knife. I don't remember picking it up. It was just in my hand. The woman sat beside me. Just a little, she whispered. Start small, a finger. You won't miss it. Then you can eat. Then you can sleep. I looked at my left hand. My pinky finger. I wouldn't miss it, would I? The knife was very sharp. I don't remember the pain. I remember the sound, a wet crunch. Then I remember feeling relieved, so relieved. I'd given something. The forest was satisfied. I could eat now. They brought me food, meat. I didn't ask what kind. I slept for a long time. When I woke up, my hand was bandaged. The wound had been cauterized. It didn't hurt. The woman smiled at me. Good, she said. You're learning. That was 3 weeks ago. Or maybe 3 months. Time doesn't work right here. I'm still at the campsite. The RV is home now. I don't try to leave anymore. I understand that I can't. The forest needs offerings, and we provide them. Small pieces at first. A finger, a toe, an ear. Bits that won't be missed. We heal. We give again. Eventually, we'll give everything. We'll become part of the forest, part of the bones, and new people will come. New travelers, new offerings. Last week, a couple arrived. Young, happy. They set up their tent at the edge of the clearing and didn't notice the bones. Not at first. We watched them. All 15 of us. 16 now, counting me. They'll understand soon enough. Everyone understands, eventually. I'm writing this on my laptop, running on the last of my RV's battery. I don't know if I'll be able to send it. There's still no signal. But maybe someone will find it someday. Maybe they'll read this and understand. Don't come to Boundary Waters. Don't camp in the clearings. Don't trust the silence. And if you wake up surrounded by bones, run. Run immediately. Don't wait. Don't try to understand. Just run, though I suspect it won't matter. The forest is patient. The forest is hungry. And the forest always gets what it wants. My right hand is heavier than it used to be. I looked at it this morning and I saw an extra finger growing from the palm, small and pale, like a child's finger. It wasn't there yesterday. The woman says that's normal. She says we give pieces away, but we also receive. We're being rebuilt, remade. Eventually, we won't look human at all. Eventually, we'll be part of the forest. There's a new RV in the clearing today. A family, parents, and 2 kids. They haven't seen the bones yet. They're unpacking, laughing, enjoying their vacation. We're watching them, all 16 of us. The woman handed me the bone knife. Your turn to invite them, she said. I don't want to. I still remember being human. I still remember Amanda, my job, my house. I remember wanting to find myself out here. I found something all right, but the forest is hungry, and I'm so very tired of resisting. The father is setting up their grill. The mother is organizing their supplies. The kids are running around, exploring. They look happy. I wonder how long it will take them to notice the bones. I wonder how long they'll fight. I wonder if they'll taste the same as the last ones. I'm walking toward their RV now. The bone knife feels right in my hand. Natural, like it belongs there. The woman is beside me. The other 14 are behind us. We're humming. The father looks up. He sees us. His face changes. He understands, but it's too late. It's always too late. The forest is hungry, and we feed it well. Story 5. My name is Olivia Price. I'm writing this from a motel room in Flagstaff, 300 miles from where it happened. I haven't slept properly in 4 days. Every time I close my eyes, I see that hatch, and I smell that air. We found it at Fish Lake National Forest in Utah about 2 weeks ago. I was there with my boyfriend Marcus and our friends Jenna and Troy. The 4 of us had rented a Class C RV for what was supposed to be a 10-day trip through Utah's backwoods. Marcus and I had been together for 3 years, and this trip was meant to be a celebration of sorts. He'd just finished his residency, and I'd finally sold my first novel. Jenna was my college roommate, still my closest friend, and Troy was her boyfriend of about 8 months. Nice guy, former high school teacher, talked a lot about hiking even though he wasn't in great shape. We arrived at Fish Lake on a Wednesday afternoon in late September. The campground was mostly empty, just a handful of other RVs scattered across the sites, and most of those looked seasonal, like their owners had left them there and wouldn't return until summer. The ranger who checked us in was friendly enough. A woman in her 50s who warned us about the cold nights and told us the showers were coin-operated. She mentioned that the southern loop was closed for the season, but we were welcome to explore the trails. There were supposed to be some pando groves nearby, those aspen colonies that are all technically one organism. Jenna was excited about that. She'd read about them in some nature magazine. The first 2 days were fine. Good, actually. We hiked during the day, cooked elaborate meals in the RV's tiny kitchen, played cards at night. Marcus and I had been arguing a lot before the trip. The kind of slow-building tension that comes from both people working too much and forgetting why they liked each other in the first place. But out there, away from our phones and routines, things felt easier. We held hands on the trails. He made me laugh. Troy snored, which annoyed Jenna. That was the biggest problem we had. On Friday morning, Troy suggested we explore the closed southern loop. He'd seen it on the map and thought there might be better hiking trails back there, away from the main campground. Marcus was against it initially. He's a rule follower, always has been, but Jenna and I talked him into it. The ranger had said it was closed for the season, not that it was dangerous or off limits. We figured we'd just walk the loop road, see what was back there. The southern loop was about 2 miles from our campsite, connected by a narrow access road that hadn't been maintained in a while. Branches scraped the RV as we drove. Troy was behind the wheel, taking the turns too fast, making Jenna grab the door handle. When we finally reached the loop, we understood why it was closed. Half the campsites were overgrown, picnic tables tilted or collapsed, fire rings buried in dead leaves. It looked like it hadn't been used in years, not just since summer ended. Creepy, Jenna said, but she was smiling when she said it. She liked creepy things. Horror movies, true crime podcasts, ghost tours. She'd dragged me to a supposed haunted asylum in Pennsylvania once. We'd paid $20 to walk through empty hallways while a teenager in a Halloween mask jumped out at us. We parked at the far end of the loop and got out to explore. The air felt different back there, heavier maybe, or just stiller. The aspen trees were thick, their white bark marked with dark scars that looked almost deliberate, like someone had carved them. Troy took pictures. Marcus stayed close to the RV, clearly uncomfortable with the whole thing. I was the one who found the hatch. It was Jenna who wanted to keep exploring after we'd walked the loop. She'd seen a deer path leading into the trees and insisted we follow it just for a few minutes. Troy and Marcus weren't interested. Troy wanted to drive back and start lunch. Marcus wanted to get out of the closed section entirely, so Jenna and I went alone. We promised we'd only go 5 minutes in. The path was narrow, winding between the aspens. Jenna walked ahead, stepping over roots and ducking under low branches. We didn't talk much. The forest had that effect. It made you want to be quiet, like you were in a library or a church. After about 10 minutes, longer than we'd promised, the path opened into a small clearing. The hatch was in the center. It was maybe 4 feet across, circular, made of metal that had oxidized to a dull green-brown. It sat flush with the ground, covered partially by dead leaves and pine needles. If we'd been walking any faster, we might have missed it entirely. But Jenna stopped, and I nearly walked into her back, and we both stood there staring at it. "What the hell?" Jenna said. I crouched down, brushed away some of the leaves. The metal was cold, rough with rust. There was a handle, a simple metal bar bolted across the center. No markings, no signs, nothing to indicate what it was or why it was there. "Some kind of maintenance thing," I said, "for the campground." "Out here?" She had a point. We were at least a 1/4 mile from the nearest campsite, deep enough into the trees that you couldn't see the loop road. It didn't make sense for there to be infrastructure this far out. Jenna pulled out her phone, took a few pictures. No signal, but she wanted them for later. Should we open it? Absolutely not. Come on, aren't you curious? I was. Of course I was. But I was also thinking about every horror movie Jenna had made me watch. Every story that started with someone opening something they shouldn't. "The guys are waiting," I said. "We told them 5 minutes. It's been longer than that already." She was right again. I looked back the way we'd come, but I couldn't see the RV through the trees. The forest was too thick. For a moment I felt disoriented, unsure which direction we'd even come from. 5 more minutes, Jenna said. Just to see. She didn't wait for me to agree. She grabbed the handle with both hands and pulled. It didn't move at first. The hinges were probably rusted shut, or the seal was too tight. Jenna braced her foot against the edge and pulled harder, and I heard her grunt with effort. Then something gave, a metallic screech that made me flinch, and the hatch swung open. The smell hit us immediately. It wasn't rot exactly. It wasn't sewage or decay or anything organic. It was more like absence, like air that hadn't moved in decades, air that had been trapped and forgotten. It made my eyes water. Jenna let go of the handle and stepped back, coughing. Jesus, she said. The hatch had opened to reveal a hole. It was perfectly round, maybe 3 feet in diameter, and lined with more of that oxidized metal. A ladder was bolted to one side, descending into darkness. I couldn't see the bottom. Okay, I said. We've seen it. Let's go. But Jenna was already pulling out her phone, turning on the flashlight. She knelt at the edge and pointed the light down. The beam didn't reach far. The hole seemed to swallow it, but I could see the ladder continuing down, rung after rung, until the light gave out. How deep do you think it goes? She asked. I don't care. There's something down there. Jenna. No, look. She shifted the angle of her phone, and I saw what she meant. About 15 feet down, where the light started to fade, there was something on the wall. A marking, maybe, or a sign. I couldn't make it out. We should tell the guys, I said. Tell them what? That we found a hole? Yes, exactly that. She looked at me and I saw the expression I'd seen 100 times before. Jenna deciding she was going to do something. Consequences be damned. I'm going down. No, you're not. Just a little way, just to see what that marking is. Jenna, we have no idea what this is. It could be dangerous. It could be… What, a monster's lair? She laughed, but it sounded forced. It's probably just an old mine shaft or something. People dig these things all over Utah. She was already swinging her legs over the edge, finding the first rung with her foot. I grabbed her arm. Please don't. Liv, it's fine. I'll be right back. She descended before I could stop her. 1 rung, then 2, then 5. Her phone light bounced around the walls of the shaft, making shadows jump. I knelt at the edge, watching her go down. My heart was beating too fast. What does it say? I called down. Hold on. Her voice echoed, sounding farther away than she actually was. I'm almost… Okay, I can see it now. What is it? There was a long pause. I heard the scrape of her shoes on metal, the sound of her breathing. Then, it's not English. What? The marking. It's not English. It's symbols or something, like… She trailed off. Like what? Another pause. Longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice sounded different, smaller. I don't like this. Then come up. Yeah, I'm coming up. I heard her start climbing. The scraping sounds grew louder, closer. I could see the glow of her phone light rising toward me. Then it stopped. Jenna? Olivia. Her voice was barely a whisper. Turn around. What? Turn around and look behind you, but don't make any noise. Every instinct told me not to, but I did it anyway. Slowly I turned my head and looked back into the trees. At first I didn't see anything. Just the aspens, their white bark catching the afternoon light. The deer path we'd followed, winding back toward the campground, and then I saw it. Someone was standing about 30 feet away, partially hidden behind one of the trees, just standing there, watching us. It was a man, I think, tall, wearing dark clothes. I couldn't make out his face, the shadows were too deep, but I could feel his eyes on us. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. I just stared at him, and he stared back, and the forest was completely silent. Then Jenna's hand grabbed my ankle and I nearly screamed. Go, she hissed from below. Go now. I didn't argue. I stood up, and the man behind the tree took a step forward. Just one step, but it was enough. I turned and ran. I heard Jenna scrambling up the ladder behind me, heard the hatch slam shut with that same metallic screech. We ran together, crashing through the underbrush, no longer following the path, just heading in what we hoped was the direction of the RV. We found it after what felt like hours but was probably 5 minutes. Marcus and Troy were sitting on the steps eating sandwiches. They looked up when we burst out of the trees, breathing hard. What happened? Marcus stood up immediately, dropping his sandwich. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. Jenna bent over, hands on her knees, gasping. There was someone, she finally managed. In the woods, watching us. What? Troy looked past us, into the trees. Who? I don't know. Just some guy. He was just standing there. Marcus put his arm around me. I was shaking, I realized. My whole body was shaking. Did he say anything? Did he try to approach you? No, I said. He just watched. Maybe he's camping, Troy said. Maybe he was just hiking. He wasn't hiking. Jenna straightened up, her face flushed. He was standing completely still, and when we saw him, he started coming toward us. We told them about the hatch, about the hole, the ladder, the strange symbols Jenna had seen. Marcus's expression grew darker as we talked. We need to leave, he said. Right now. It's probably nothing, Troy said. Someone exploring, same as us. You guys just spooked each other. I'm not spooked. Jenna's voice was sharp. I know what I saw. We compromised. We'd drive back to our campsite, but we wouldn't pack up and leave entirely. It was already past 2, and Marcus pointed out that driving when we were all rattled wasn't smart. We'd spend one more night, then leave first thing in the morning. The drive back to the main campground was tense. Nobody talked. I kept looking out the window, searching the trees for any sign of movement, but the forest remained still, empty. That night I couldn't eat. Marcus made pasta, and I pushed it around my plate while the others talked about the hatch, speculating about what it might be. Troy thought it was an old mining operation. Apparently, there were silver mines all over Utah. Jenna had looked up the symbols on her phone. We'd driven close enough to the ranger station to get a weak signal, but hadn't found anything that matched. Maybe it's some government thing, she said, like a bunker or something. Why would there be a bunker in the middle of a forest? Marcus asked. I don't know, Cold War shit. Didn't they put nuclear missile silos everywhere back then? The conversation continued, but I stopped listening. I was thinking about the man in the trees, about the way he'd stood so still like he'd been waiting for us, about how, when I'd looked at him, I'd felt something I couldn't name, not quite fear, but something adjacent to it. Recognition, maybe. I excused myself and went to bed early. The RV had a small bedroom in the back, barely bigger than the mattress. Marcus joined me an hour later. He curled up behind me, his arm around my waist. You okay? He whispered. No. We'll leave tomorrow, first thing. Okay. But sleep didn't come. I lay there in the dark, listening to the sounds of the RV settling, the wind in the trees outside, Troy's snoring from the fold-out couch. And underneath it all, I kept hearing that metallic screech, the sound of the hatch opening. Around 3 a.m, I heard something else. Footsteps. They were soft, careful, moving around the outside of the RV. I held my breath, listening. They circled once, twice, then they stopped. I waited for the knock, for the voice asking for help or demanding we come out, but it never came. After a few minutes of silence, I heard the footsteps retreat, moving away into the darkness. In the morning, I found the handprint. It was on the driver's side window up near the front of the RV, a perfect print, like someone had pressed their palm flat against the glass. But the fingers were too long, too thin, and the print wasn't made of oil or dirt. It looked more like it had been burned into the glass, a faint brown stain that wouldn't wipe away. I showed Marcus. He stared at it for a long moment, his jaw tight. We're leaving, he said, right now. I don't care if the others want to stay. But Jenna and Troy were already awake, already packing. They'd heard the footsteps too. None of us had slept after that. We were packed and ready to go by 8. Marcus was pulling out of the campsite when Jenna said, Wait. No, Marcus said. Just wait. Look. She was pointing at the campground entrance where a truck was parked, a ranger's truck. The same ranger who checked us in was standing next to it, talking to someone. The someone was the man from the trees. I knew it was him before I could even make out his features. He was tall, wearing dark clothes, and even from a distance, there was something off about the way he stood. Too still, too rigid. That's him, Jenna breathed. That's the guy. The ranger seemed to be asking him questions, but the man wasn't responding. He just stood there, and even from 50 feet away, I could feel him looking at us. At our RV, Marcus honked the horn. The ranger turned, waved at us, then walked over. Morning, folks, she said when Marcus rolled down the window. Everything all right? We're leaving, Marcus said. His voice was clipped, tense. Is there a problem with that man? The ranger glanced back at him, frowned. He says he's been camping in the southern loop. I told him that section's closed, but he claims he's been there for 2 weeks. You folks seen anyone back there? Yesterday, Jenna said from behind us. We saw him yesterday. He was watching us. The ranger's frown deepened. Watching you? In the trees. We were exploring, and he was just standing there, staring at us. Did he approach you? No, but he started to before we ran. The ranger looked back at the man again. He hadn't moved. I'll take care of it, she said. You folks have a safe trip. Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He drove out of the campground at just under the speed limit, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I watched the ranger and the man in the side mirror until they disappeared from view. We drove for an hour in complete silence. The tension in the RV was suffocating. Finally, somewhere past Richfield, Troy spoke up. Can we talk about what happened? No, Marcus said. I just think, no. We stopped for gas in Salina. While Marcus filled the tank, Jenna and I went into the convenience store for coffee. Neither of us had spoken since leaving the campground. We stood at the coffee station adding sugar and creamer, avoiding each other's eyes. I need to tell you something, Jenna finally said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. What? When I was down in that hole, in the hatch. She stirred her coffee, not looking at me. I lied about what I saw. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Those symbols. They weren't just symbols. She glanced toward the window where Marcus and Troy were visible at the pump. They were words. English words. I just couldn't. I didn't want to say it out loud. What did they say? She finally looked at me. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. They said, "Don't breathe the air." I stared at her. What? That's what was written on the wall. Don't breathe the air. And Liv, when I read it, I realized I'd been breathing it, that air from the hatch. It was in my lungs. Jenna, and there's something else. She set down her coffee, untouched. When we ran. When we were running back to the RV. Did you look behind you? Even once? No, I just ran. I did. Just for a second. Her voice dropped even lower. Liv, the man who was watching us, he wasn't following us. He was standing next to the hatch, and it was open. It was still open, even though I'd closed it, and he was smiling. We got back in the RV. I didn't tell Marcus what Jenna had said. What was the point? We were leaving. We were already 50 miles away, and every minute put more distance between us and that place. By evening we'd be in Arizona. By tomorrow we'd be home, but the feeling didn't leave. It sat in my chest heavy and cold, like I'd swallowed something that wouldn't digest. Jenna felt it too. I could tell by the way she kept touching her throat, swallowing hard like she was trying to clear something that wouldn't clear. We stopped for lunch in Panguitch, a small diner, vinyl booths, a waitress who called everyone Hun. The food was good. I had a burger, Marcus had meatloaf, but I couldn't taste it. Everything tasted like that air, like nothing. Troy excused himself to use the bathroom. He was gone for a while, long enough that Jenna went to check on him. She came back alone, her face pale. "He's not in there," she said. "What do you mean?" Marcus stood up. "The bathroom's empty. He's not." I checked both stalls. "He's not there." We searched the diner, the kitchen, the back entrance, the parking lot. Troy was gone. His phone was in his pocket. We'd heard it ring when Jenna called him, but he wasn't answering. We asked the waitress if she'd seen him leave. She hadn't seen anything. The police took a report. They seemed concerned, but not alarmed. A grown man stepping out for some air wasn't unusual, they said. He'd probably turn up. We should wait at the diner in case he came back. We waited 4 hours. Troy never came back. The police suggested we file a missing persons report in the morning if he didn't show up. They took our information, told us to stay in touch, advised us not to leave the state. Marcus argued. We lived in California. We couldn't just stay in Utah indefinitely, but eventually agreed we'd stay one more night. We checked into a motel in Panguitch, got 2 rooms. Jenna was in shock, barely speaking. Marcus made phone calls to Troy's family, to our friends, to anyone who might have heard from him. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. At some point, Jenna came into our room. She didn't knock, just opened the door and walked in. Marcus was on the phone in the bathroom, so it was just the 2 of us. "We breathed it," she said. I looked at her. "What?" "The air, from the hatch. We both breathed it." She sat down next to me, her hands shaking. "And now Troy's gone. And I keep thinking, what if it's not over? What if whatever was down there, whatever that air was, what if it's inside us now?" "Jenna, you're in shock. Troy probably just walked away in the middle of lunch, without his phone, without his wallet, without saying a word." She laughed, but it was a broken sound. "Liv, something happened, something bad. And I think it started when we opened that hatch." Marcus emerged from the bathroom. He looked exhausted. Older somehow. "They're sending someone to look for him," he said. "Search and rescue. They'll start in the morning." "He's not lost in the woods," Jenna said quietly. "He was in a bathroom, in a diner, in the middle of town." Marcus didn't have an answer for that. That night I dreamed of the hatch. I was back in the clearing, standing over the open hole, and I could hear something climbing up the ladder. The scrape of metal, the sound of breathing. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. I could only stand there and wait for whatever was rising toward me. When it reached the top, when its hand gripped the edge of the hatch, I saw that it was me, my own face, my own body, climbing out of the darkness. But the eyes were wrong. They were empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside and left only the shell. The other me smiled, opened its mouth, and that air came out, that terrible dead air, rushing over me, filling my lungs. I woke up gasping. Marcus was asleep beside me, snoring softly. The clock said 3:47 a.m. I got up, went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face. My reflection looked wrong in the mirror. Tired, yes, but something else. Something I couldn't name. When I came out of the bathroom, Jenna was standing in our room. She was just standing there, in the dark, not moving. She was facing the wall, her back to me. I could see her shoulders rising and falling with each breath. "Jenna?" My voice came out as a whisper. She didn't turn around, didn't respond. "Jenna, what are you doing?" Slowly, so slowly, she turned to face me, and when I saw her expression, I understood. I understood everything. She was smiling, but it wasn't her smile. It was the same smile I'd seen in my dream, empty and wrong. And her eyes, God, her eyes were vacant, like she was looking at me but not seeing me, like she was somewhere else entirely. "The air," she said, but it wasn't her voice. It was flatter, monotone. "We breathe the air." I backed toward the bed, thinking I'd wake Marcus, thinking we'd call for help. But Jenna moved faster than I expected. She crossed the room in 2 strides and grabbed my arm. Her grip was too strong, painful. "It's inside us now," she said in that flat voice. "It's changing us. Can't you feel it?" I could. God help me. I could. There was something in my chest, in my lungs. Something cold and foreign that hadn't been there before. Something that moved when I breathed. "Let go," I said. "We have to go back," Jenna said. "We have to close the hatch. That's the only way to stop it." "Jenna, please, don't you understand?" Her grip tightened. "It's spreading. First us, then Troy, then everyone. It won't stop until someone closes the hatch." Marcus woke up then, confused and groggy. "What's going on?" Jenna let go of my arm, turned to look at him, and smiled that terrible, empty smile. "Nothing," she said in her normal voice, or close to it, just slightly off. I couldn't sleep. I was worried about Troy. Marcus rubbed his eyes. "Go back to your room, Jenna. It's late." She nodded, said goodnight, and left. The door clicked shut behind her. Marcus looked at me. "You okay?" "No," I whispered. "No, I'm not okay." But I didn't tell him what happened. What would I say? That Jenna had turned into something else? Something wrong? That I could feel that same wrongness inside myself, growing with every breath? He'd think I was hysterical, in shock. Hell, maybe I was. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I lay there listening to Marcus breathe, listening to the sounds of the motel, and feeling that thing in my chest expand and contract with every breath I took. In the morning, Jenna was gone. Her room was empty, bed made, no sign she'd ever been there. Her car was still in the parking lot. Her phone was on the nightstand, battery dead. She'd left everything except herself. The police added her to their search. 2 missing persons now, both connected to us. They asked us more questions, looked at us differently. I could see the suspicion forming. Marcus hired a lawyer, started making arrangements to stay longer, but I knew they wouldn't find either of them. Not Troy, not Jenna. They were gone, taken by whatever had come out of that hatch. Or maybe they'd gone back willingly, drawn by the same thing I felt pulling at me, the need to return, to descend that ladder, to breathe more of that air until there was nothing of me left but an empty shell. I'm writing this from the motel because I don't know what else to do. Marcus is meeting with the police again. He thinks I'm resting, recovering. He doesn't know that every breath I take makes me less myself. He doesn't know that I can feel myself disappearing, piece by piece, replaced by something that wears my face but isn't me. Last night I looked in the mirror and saw myself smiling. But I wasn't trying to smile. My face just did it on its own, and I couldn't stop it. I don't know how much longer I have. A day? A few hours? I can already feel the pull. The urge to get in the car, to drive back to Fish Lake, to find that clearing and that hatch and climb down into the darkness. To become whatever Jenna and Troy became. Marcus will try to stop me. He'll think I'm having a breakdown. Maybe I am. But I know what I felt in that clearing, what I breathed in when that hatch opened. It's ancient and patient, and it's been waiting down there for a very long time. And now it's found us. The air that came out of that hatch wasn't meant to breathe. It was meant to infect, to change, to hollow us out and make us vessels for something that should have stayed buried. We shouldn't have opened it. I'm leaving this account in the motel room when I go. Maybe someone will find it. Maybe it will help explain what happened to us. But probably not. Probably they'll just find it and think I was crazy, that the stress of losing my friends made me imagine things. But if you're reading this and if you ever find yourself in Fish Lake National Forest, in a clearing that isn't on any map, and if you see a metal hatch buried in the leaves, don't open it. Don't breathe the air. And whatever you do, don't go back. I can feel it now stronger than ever. The pull, the need. My hands are moving without me telling them to, reaching for the car keys Marcus left on the nightstand. I'm trying to stop them, but I can't. I can't. I have to go back. I have to close the hatch, or maybe, and this is the thought that terrifies me most, maybe I have to open it wider. The air that wasn't meant to breathe is in my lungs now, and it's whispering to me in a language I shouldn't understand but do. It's telling me there are others down there, in the dark, waiting. It's telling me I'll understand everything once I descend. It's telling me I'll be complete. My reflection is smiling again. I'm not. Or maybe I am, and I just don't know it anymore. I don't know what's me and what's it. I don't know if there's a difference. Marcus is calling my name from outside. He's back from the police station. I should answer him. I should tell him what's happening. I should... The keys are in my hand now. I don't remember picking them up. I have to go. God forgive me. I have to go back.